kind of asks the first question. If the military is having trouble recruiting because of the woke social engineering policies, what are the chances there may be a draft if we wind up at war with Russia, China, or perhaps both?
So I think that's an excellent question, and the answer is it depends. And I'm not talking about the one that Joe Biden wears either. I'm just
Oh,
talking about the
ouch.
fact that it depends on what the political winds are blowing with at the time. The um, the theory is that we have an adequate number of reservists and guards members, guard men and women, who would be available to fill in the active duty ranks. The problem is the reserve components are pretty much picked clean of a lot of resources. This wasn't well known, but a lot of the time you'd have a guard or reserve unit deploy forward, go into theater, and then they leave their gear. They leave it for whoever's coming after them, or to give to the forces of the country we were in, Afghanistan, Iraq. So we depleted a lot of stuff. And secondly, the ranks of themselves were just depleted by 13% because of folks refusing to take COVID shots, which is, I think, very reasonable, and I think was the right thing to do. So it depends on, I think, what the force structure looks like at the time of the crisis before you could actually adequately assess if a draft would be politically feasible or not. So I know that's not a right yes or no answer, but I think that's one of the more accurate ones. So if I'm open to my colleagues disagreeing or agreeing or adding any information to that. So
Well, I think a big question is, do the Democrats want to draft? In their secret heart of hearts, do they want to draft because it would give them more power? Uh, in the 70s, the Democrats didn't want to draft because they didn't want an army. But now that they think of it as their army, do they want to draft? If they do want to draft, then the minute there's a real need for it or a perceived need, they are very adept right now at monkeying around with the press and quickly doing things quickly, faking things out. It's much harder now to stop them when they really have a clearly defined goal. So for right now, I'm still hoping that they don't want it.
by the way, just for the audience to understand, Jay saying Democrats monkeying around no way implies that they are carriers or purveyors of monkeypox. Just a disclaimer there for everybody to understand. It's not related.
My particular concern is less about whether there will or won't or could or couldn't be a draft than whether we actually have sensible plans for, let's just assume for a minute that the potential is there for China to actually get truly aggressive and generate a situation in which we end up in a kinetic war against them. And let us also assume that as part of some strange coincidence, the Russians also decide to get aggressive at the same time, not to mention potentially the North Koreans, the Iranians, the Venezuelans, the Cubans, a number of others. Bottom line is, if we get into a serious kinetic war somewhere, we would need to suddenly train an awful lot of people, regardless of whether it's by draft or not. Now, potentially a draft is then a much higher likelihood. And my big question is, has anybody actually planned for it decently so that we actually give these people some training?
People have a poor understanding of what happened during World War II, and it's important because the last time the United States actually fought anywhere near a peer competitor, last time we fought if you will, a whole nation war with World War II. Yep. In World War II, we wound up with this massive draft, this massive force structure, and what is not understood, and a lot of people have seen the short series there about the parachute unit that went down that jumped into Normandy on D-Day, Band of Brothers. If you go back and look at Band of Brothers, if you go back and look at the actual Band of Brothers, that parachute unit, they
508.
I'm sorry.
There's a 508, 509th. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's 508.
Yeah.
But they went through 2 years of training, of very hard, aggressive training. Nobody in that unit had been in combat before because they had been 2 years of training. They started training in the summer of 42 before they jumped in June of 44. How was it that there was a training facility for them to jump at? The answer is because there were some real professionals, unlike the story that's normally told about the U.S. military was all deadwood prior to Pearl Harbor. There were some professionals in the 20s and 30s who laid out a quite extensive set of plans within plans that entailed everything from the particulars of what needed to be loaded aboard a ship to all the way back to how we dig the mines to get the ore, to make the metal, to make the things that were made into weapons that went on board that ship. And where would we set up training facilities? Who would build those training facilities? How would you actually build a training facility? How many contractors did you need? All that kind of thing was all worked out with remarkable detail in the years prior to World War II.
Right.
And none of that really is taking place right now. We do not have a system in place because we replaced it with a very much smaller, less than 1/10 the size of the army we had, the military we had in World War II, a very much smaller military that focuses on a lot of very specific training and very high technology weapons. And we have a command and control system and a doctrine, a process of use, which is predicated upon having an abundance of high precision weapons and a small group of very well trained people. And to simply go from that to, well, we need a very large army because we're now fighting the Russians and the Chinese, and that is a monstrous problem that requires a great deal of work in figuring out how do we change our training, how do we change our doctrine, how do we change our weapons, how do we change our use, how do we change our very specific training, tactics and operations while forward engaged. It is not something that we are prepared to do right now, and it would be a tremendous hurdle getting over that.
You guys, most people are aware that I do a lot of research on the Second Amendment. And one of the things that I'm conscious of is that the US military holds around 3 million personal firearms. That's 2 million of which pretty much are rifles of some sort. During World War II, when we were completely engaged, there were 12 million people under arms at some stage or other. So what we're saying is we have to find an extra, potentially, as a planning figure, 10 million rifles from somewhere. They don't currently exist. Where do they come from? How do we get them? How do we provide the basic soldier that we're going to produce in the event of a draft with a weapon and all the other stuff that goes with it? And that's why I'm deeply concerned that it's not just about should we or shouldn't we have a draft. It's are we prepared in case we need to have one?
And the other issue too that needs to be worked out is how do we intend to fight? Because if it's going to take us 12 to 18 months to put together this army, what is going on in the meantime between us and China, us? And
well, the priorities are just not there. I mean, think about this for a second. Tim, I think the last time I checked, the whole British Army, to include reserves and active component, were about 112,000, give or take.
80,000 regulars and 32,000 reserves.
So think about this. So there's going to be more IRS agents, 87,000 being created than active duty component members of the British military. Think about that. So our priorities are not military. It's something else.
Tony, the IRS agents are going to outnumber the U.S. Marine Corps.
There you go.
Boy. Absolutely fantastic. And you have to
think
think
about
though,
that.
you also have to think the population of Canada might be going up pretty hefty too when we have a draft.
So, but back to the point we were trying to make regarding numbers, that the policy side that shows the policy is we're going to go about auditing anybody we can figure out how to audit and shoot them otherwise, and that's what they're saying for our priorities. Regarding a near peer thing, Pete worked with me on several projects prior to the Trump administration coming into office regarding Plan Orange. Plan Orange was the strategic set of exercises and plans that examined the potential of going to war with Japan. It was part of something called the Rainbow Plan, the Rainbow Strategy. Basically, during the interwar years between World War I and World War II, there was a comprehensive series of war games, right, Pete? Just war games, I guess.
War
Mostly
games,
started by
exercises, desktop
Yeah.
exercises. I think
the
Pete,
Navy started it at Annapolis. Army picked up on it, joined in, and it was the Rainbow Series. And we're not talking about the rainbows we talk about today. It was like Plan Black, I think, was to go into war with the British. So there was a plan to go to war pretty much with everybody. No offense, Tim. I'm not saying that because
I'm American. I'm fine with
I
it.
think I think it could have been an interesting thing, but just saying. Anyway, but we had a plan to go to war with everybody. And Plan Orange happened to be the one that was played out and examined regarding the British, regarding the Japanese. And it was very, very accurate, predicted well where everybody would go once everything started. And the Navy executed that plan to win the Pacific pretty quickly. And I think the Navy, and I'm sure that my Army compatriots will get on me for this. I think the Navy could have won the Pacific back without MacArthur's nonsense. Just saying, if MacArthur was, I think, more about MacArthur than doing an effective strategy to beat the Japanese. I think he was embittered, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, I think we lack that over the horizon thinking. We lack the idea that we're going to put that together. And then to Pete's other point regarding what do? We have not. One of the things that when I joined, we had still in the Army inventory was called a field kitchen. A field kitchen could actually produce things like bread, field ovens, cook stuff from scratch. We don't have that now. Everything has been turned over to the private sector. It's all done by contractors. So the very things you need to have a large land army be effective, living in the field, not living in some nice house with all these nice kitchens and built up stuff. That stuff doesn't exist. You don't have it in the inventory. And I don't think the Navy could do it either. I don't think the Marine Corps has it either. But at the time during World War II, the Army could go to the field and live in the field and fight from the field without having to worry about contractors showing up with the right number of contract workers being able to do that, or MPs. Marine Corps has gotten rid of MPs. There's no more MPs in the Marine Corps.
The whole logistics problem of a draft has not been considered in modern times. And I give you one other one. Going Pete's wonderful example of the Band of Brothers, there's a bit in that where they've been in the field, they've been dropped into Normandy, they've been fighting solidly for some weeks, and they move through a shower unit where they change their clothes and everything like that. As you say, Tony, in the same way as the field kitchens have gone, so we couldn't feed them, the shower units are gone, so they couldn't clean themselves.
We had all. I mean, when I joined the Guard in '81, the 371st Support Group. Shout out to all the folks still out there and watching us. Had all this. They had field kitchens, field showers, everything you had to have to survive. We were a core support group, and that meant you provided the core support. And our job was, as part of Reforger, to go in ahead with rapid deployment forces to make sure this was all taken care of. So the very concept of how we fight war is degraded to the point of where I don't think we have anybody who has a strategic clue on how to do it. Most of the generals today had no, even generals who joined about the same time I did, I think, have lost the lessons of the Cold War and those things they should have known from World War II. So,
to summarize, really, the overarching point is that World War I was a great preparation for World War II. And we don't have that anymore.
It raises a very simple issue too, and there's no answer to it, but it's an issue that probably deserves a great deal of congressional discussion if the Congress is ever going to actually do their job, and that is that there ought to be a shell of a draft for no other purpose than that we have the thinking going on, the planning going on, so that if we need it, we can execute it.
That's right.
it. That's my big concern. Whether we should have a draft or not, there should be a plan for one, and we don't even have that. So
Right.
no, my
Oh.
basic answer to the question is no, there can't be a draft.
Then we have to fix the recruitment problem. That's what
The
needs to be
recruitment
done.
problem would be solved the moment the military figures out how to emulate Top Gun Maverick. If they can figure out what made that movie great and put that into their recruiting programs, I think they could figure it out. They don't want to figure it out. It's not about anything they want to do. So,
Thank you for watching this clip of our Ask Us Anything session, part of our Thought to Action series presented by the London Center for Policy Research. If you'd like to see the full Ask Us Anything session, enjoy exclusive content you won't see anywhere else, as well as sneak previews, and to ask your own questions, please become a member of our Patreon page, patreon.com/thought2action. Members will enjoy more exclusive in-depth conversations, as well as panel discussions, and live streams are coming. Once again, thank you for being with us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and make your day an excellent one.